Hi there, everybody. Salam, habari, niao. How are you today? Hi to Leah and Casey and Cara. Gosh, I miss you guys so much. I have a story for you tonight. This one is a longer story, so I'm giving you a heads up right away. You might want to wait to watch this one when you have lots of time, or watch a little bit at a time. And it's called The Fox on the Swing. And as always, I picked this out because I thought the cover looked interesting and I liked it. Now, it is written by two authors, and I can't pronounce their last names, and I don't want to be rude and mispronounce their names. So I will just say that it is written by Evelina and Aušra, and their full names will be written in the description of the video. So in case you wanted to know, so you could find it for yourself at the library, you'll see it there. Now get a blanket, get snuggled up, and get ready for this story. The Fox on the Swing. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Paul. Wait, that's not quite right. This story begins in a different way. In a big city, there was a pretty park. On the edge of the park, there was a very tall tree, which had been growing there for a very long time. The tree was special not only because it was very old and very tall, but because people lived inside it. A boy named Paul, his mother, and his father. They were a fairly normal family, apart from the fact that they lived in a tree. Every morning, Paul's father climbed the ladder to the top of the tree. There was a small helicopter pad up there and an orange helicopter. Paul's father would get into the helicopter and fly away out of sight. It was his job to take people and things from one place to another. And there's the people, and there's the things, and there's his dad flying. Paul's mother worked at home, making things out of clay. She made vases, bowls, and pots. Most of them were orange. When she'd made so many pots that there was no room to walk across the floor, Paul's father would pile all of her pottery into his helicopter and take it to a shop in the city where it could be sold. Every afternoon, Paul's mother asked him to run down to the bakery to buy fresh bread rolls. When your dad comes home, we'll sit down together and drink tea and eat the rolls. They'll be so delicious. Then she would give Paul some money and a bag to carry the rolls. What Paul liked best was to take the shortest way to the bakery and the long way home. Walking the same way twice was a little bit boring after all. On his way to the bakery, he saw parents with babies, runners, cyclists, dog walkers, and kids riding scooters and skateboards. When he reached the edge of the park, he could find the bakery with his eyes closed. In fact, he often tried to do exactly that. He would shut his eyes and let the wonderful smell lead him to the bakery. Sometimes it worked, but sometimes he would trip over a stone or bump into someone else. Nobody liked that. Once he arrived at the bakery, Paul would give his money to the baker, Maggie, who made all the bread and cakes herself. Paul would ask for 3 fresh rolls, and Maggie would put them into a paper bag for him. Then Paul would set off for home. Paul always kept his eyes wide open as he walked home. He didn't want to miss a thing. He saw strangely shaped stones, fascinating twisted roots, fancy birds that had escaped from the zoo, and puddles that glistened on the ground. But the thing that Paul liked the most of all was the old swing in the park. Not to swing on himself, but because there was a fox who liked to curl up and sleep on the seat in the swing. Paul didn't see her there every day, maybe about once a week. One day, Paul saw something he could hardly believe. The fox was actually swinging on the swing. The fox saw Paul and just kept on swinging. Then she stopped, sniffed the air, looked at Paul in the eye, and said, "Being generous is like an ocean. Would you like to be a drop in that ocean?" Paul didn't understand, but he nodded anyway. "Then give me one of your rolls," the fox said. Paul didn't really want to share the rolls with the fox. There were only 3 rolls, one for himself, his mother, and his father. However, after frowning just a little, he took out his own roll and he gave it to the fox. After that, whenever he met the fox, he gave her his roll. On those days, Paul's parents did not quite believe his story about the fox and why the 3rd roll had disappeared. But when they sat down for tea, they would break off pieces of their own rolls and give them to Paul. Having a fox as your friend is the same as swinging on a swing, Paul said as he ate. There are ups and downs. One day it might be fun. The next day it might not be so fun. Some days he found the fox in a bad mood. "I'm down in the dumps," the fox might say. Sometimes she added, "I have a bad case of the blues." And when a fox has the blues, there's not much you can do to make it bright and orange again. The fox would tell Paul all sorts of stories that she had heard from her grandmother, who was a very wise old fox. Paul did not always understand the stories. They were a little bit strange. "Are you calling my stories strange?" asked the fox in a temper. "My stories are perfectly fine. It must be you that's strange." Paul told the fox stories about his own life. Often he asked her for advice. "My grandfather was a wise old fox," the fox would say. "He told me that everything depends on your point of view. Things can change, depend on whether you're looking at them from above or down below, from the left or from the right. So ask me again when you've looked at the problem from all sides." One day, when the fox was in a very good mood, she said, "The best thing to do is just keep on swinging." Then she explained that the happiest things in the world are orange. "Happiness is a fox on a swing and a big orange," she yelled as the swing carried her high into the sky. "Happiness is carrot cake, goldfish, marmalade, and trees in autumn." Then she let Paul take a turn on the swing. As he flew through the air, Paul called out, "Happiness is my mother's pots and my dad's helicopter. Happiness is an orange basketball and Maggie's ginger cat. But most of all, happiness is a fox." "Will I always find you here?" Paul asked. "Of course not," the fox replied. "When I need to be somewhere else, that's where I'll go." "But what about me?" Paul asked sadly. The fox thought about that for a moment. For a while, I think you'll walk this way and still expect to find me here. Then you'll stop coming this way so you don't have to see this place and the swing anymore. But sooner or later, someone will come along to take my place. After this conversation, things were never the same again. Paul felt uneasy as he walked a long way home if the fox wasn't there. He worried that he'd never see her again. If she was there, he felt happier than he'd ever felt before. One day, Paul's father came home from work much happier than usual. He kissed Paul's mother and lifted Paul high up into the air. He told them that soon they would be moving to an even bigger city, where they would live in an even taller tree and an even bigger park, and he would fly an even bigger helicopter. Everything will be so much better than before, Paul's father said. But what if we're happy enough already? Paul asked. He really didn't want to live anywhere else. There's no such thing as being happy enough, his father said. Things can always get better. The next time they met, Paul and the fox looked up at the stars together. Then Paul told the fox that he was going to move away. So this is how it happens. You're going to disappear and I will stay here, the fox said. I'm not disappearing. They're making me move. It's not the same thing, Paul cried. I don't want to leave. I want to stay here. You're my best friend. My father, who was a very wise fox, always said that it takes time to know when something is good, the fox said to Paul. Imagine a cake with cream inside. You might not bite into the cream right away, but only getting to it after a few bites. If you keep eating, the cake will taste better and better. A week later, Paul and his parents climbed into the bigger helicopter and flew to the bigger park in the bigger city, to their bigger home in the taller tree. Days went by, but Paul did not feel any better, only worse. Paul felt angry. You promised everything would be better here, he said to his father. You need to give it some time, Paul's mother said. Just wait a little longer and things will get better. Try to be patient, his father added. Remember, good things come to those who wait. Just like before, Paul walked to the bakery every day. The new bakery was bigger than the old one, and 2 bakers worked there. Their names were Emily and Rose. One of them would put 3 fresh rolls into a paper bag, and Paul would walk home the same way he had come. One day, on his way home from the bakery, Paul saw a path winding through the woods. He hadn't noticed it before. Feeling curious, he headed down the path. As he walked, he noticed strangely shaped stones and fascinating twisted roots. He saw fancy birds that looked as though they had escaped from the zoo, and puddles that glistened on the ground. Paul began to run along the path, jumping into the air for joy. He was having so much fun. Then suddenly, in the distance, he saw a swing. The swing was flying back and forth through the air, and there on the swing was the orange fox. Fox, Paul called out, how did you get here? I told you, the fox answered. When I need to be somewhere else, that's where I go. Want to turn on the swing? Yes, please, Paul cried. I've missed swinging so much. I've missed yelling about what happiness is. A big orange, my mother's pots, and my dad's helicopter. carrot cake, goldfish, marmalade, and trees in autumn, an orange basketball, and Rosie's pet hamster. But most of all, happiness is a fox. The end. I'm so happy that Paul found his happy place again. He was so sad to be leaving his house, his tree house, and he didn't want to move to a new park in a new city in a new tree house. He wanted everything to be the same because that's what made him happy, especially his new friend, the fox. And I'm glad that he got used to his new place and found that he loved that too. And then the fox found him. What a lovely story. I hope you enjoyed that. And yes, it was a long one, wasn't it? I hope you have a great night, everyone. And I love you and I miss you. And I'll see you soon. Tot ziens, vis lat, farewell. Bye.